arguably, the toughest assignment for England's men is an away series victory in India. They've only managed to achieve it twice in the last 40 years. Once in 1984-5, under the captaincy of David Gower, and once in 2012-13, under the captaincy of Sir Alistair Cook. And I'm absolutely delighted to say that I have him alongside me here in his rather lovely nook with his dog Betty on his lap. Welcome aboard, Alistair.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done a podcast with a live animal fast asleep, and it looks like she's had a tough day.
Yeah, and yet I know that she's done absolutely nothing.
I'm not sure miniature dachshunds are meant to do anything, but she's quite a cool little dog.
Now, though, let's talk about 2012, because it was an extraordinary achievement. Your first series as full-time captain. You played as captain a couple of times in Bangladesh, but you're appointed after Andrew Strauss has resigned at a time when English cricket was going through a little bit of an awkward time. Every transition is tricky, but on the back of some rather incendiary texts that Kevin Peterson had sent, which were particularly pejorative towards his captain during the series that England played at home against South Africa, he had been suspended from the side and was now being, as I recall, reintegrated. And you, as captain, were going to be charged with his reintegration. Talk us through how awkward that time was.
Well, it was a strange old time. I love how words which you kind of totally forgotten about, can't even remember now, but you know what I mean, words which were used and were very fashionable at the time. So yeah, it was, my first kind of assignment as captain was, do we bring KP back or do we not? And kind of the hours of meeting, I think Andy Flower took I would say the brunt of it, the decision making. I don't think it was particularly easy, but we decided after a lot of to and fro to bring him back. If he we did a few meetings with him and on our own and as coaches and stuff to decide. But sometimes when you're in the bubble, when you're in the big of it, you think cricket seems the most important thing. It's like nothing else matters, and actually it is still just a game of cricket. And I think that was kind of the second part, the main reason to bring him back. Yes, what happened in the summer wasn't great, but it's just a game of cricket, and everyone deserves a kind of a second chance and all that stuff. So fundamentally, I think we made the right decision. I don't think everyone in the team agreed with the decision, obviously with their loyalty to Strauss, and obviously that it kind of did test that thing. And I do remember chatting to Strauss, and he had no ill judge of me and Flower for bringing him back, but I think he did say it will end in disaster. Probably he was kind of right, but we did have a couple of good innings before it ended in disaster.
Well, you did. You had one spectacular innings that we are going to come on to talk about. I was looking through this series, and I remember it pretty well, but there are certain aspects to it that I feel like they're from a different age. Because it's a long old tour, 4 test matches,
yep,
which in itself isn't too long, but you have tacked on right at the beginning of that 3 tour matches. So your first tour match starts on the 30th of October. The first test match doesn't start until, the 15th of November. So you've got there, you've acclimatised in a way that England nowadays, and the Ashes, they acclimatised with a match between themselves, didn't they? And then going off to Dubai perhaps to go and practice before a big series. You have 3 tour matches, and what was the thinking behind that?
Well, I think the India series kind of aligns with the Ashes, doesn't it? Like the 2 big series you can play away from home and winning away from home. But the thought process, obviously, in 2010-11 when we won there, we had 3 brilliant first-class games before that series against high-quality opposition, and really got us match toughness. And I know, I fundamentally think there should be some match practice and all the nets you can do. I know it's a modern, different game in terms of franchise cricket, and guys seem to be playing a lot more, but there's nothing like match toughness, in my opinion. And I think 3 was overkill. And actually, in that series, we probably didn't play the strongest option. I think the first game might have been fairly decent standard.
That was India A.
Yeah, bumped into Bajara, I think.
Well,
first time.
Manoj Tiwari, Ajinkya Rahane, they both played.
Oh, so decent. So it was really worth playing. And then maybe I don't think I might not have played the second, and Bajara got some runs, or someone but the third was not of the highest quality. So I do understand the modern thing. Tours are short, everything's so contracted, and obviously before franchises. But we were ready. We were ready to play. One would say desperate to play, I suppose. But again, how much you need those games now? Looking back, I think you need some.
What was your plan when you go out there? Because England hadn't won a series out there for 28 years, but they'd made it to number one in the world, lost the mace to South Africa the previous summer, but it was built on the back of tremendous seam bowling resources and Graham Swan balancing your side. So did you go in there thinking you're going to play an English way, or did you think about needing to adapt to Indian conditions?
Well, I think you obviously have to adapt to English conditions, but you still fundamentally try and play to your strengths as a side. And I think looking back, and again, maybe the memory's not quite right, but India historically, very hard to beat at home, but wouldn't exactly go for the jugular, play on good test wickets. And hopefully they get 1-0 up and then play on even flatter wickets, and over a 5-day game, kind of how quickly games can accelerate towards the end of days 4 and 5. If they happen to push the results over, because they're always in the game with their high quality spinners, and when it starts to turn, they might nick it. Might win 2-0 out of 4 or whatever. So I think even going to Ahmedabad, and you didn't look at that wicket and think it's going to rag. So our strengths, would have been with the balance of the attack, the kind of all round, Broad, Anderson, Bresnan, and Swan. I think Finney was injured for that first game, and then Samit as the backup. If Samit's a decent, was he Monty Panesar class? No, he wasn't, but he's a decent spinner, lands it well. Had played at that stage, was in our one-day plans, and played quite a lot of our one-day cricket. So, an all-round package with the bat. I was trying to lengthen our tail. Fundamentally, it was the wrong call, but that would have been the thing. And also, I suppose, first game as captain, you're used to operating with 3 seamers. They're kind of a comfort blanket. Probably it was the wrong call.
Well, it seems anachronistic now, but you've got to put this in the context, and you're absolutely right there, that India tended to be a high-scoring environment. It's only really the last 5 or 6 years that we've seen really ragging pitches, where spinners really come to the fore and seamers have no effect. And in that first innings, what you're hoping for every time is you're going to win the toss, you're going to bat first. Now, you were particularly bad, if you don't mind me saying so, at winning the toss throughout this series.
I don't think I was very good at all. So I can't actually remember.
No, you were disastrously bad for the most part, apart from the last game. But in this game, India win the toss, the worst thing that can happen. They pile up 521. You see Pujara and you see him up close and personal, but you also see Virender Sehwag. Yeah. At the end of the first session, we're not going to go into lots of detail with the scores, but it's worth noting, 120 for none. Virender Sehwag's going like a train. Your first session as full-time captain, how are you feeling?
Yeah, obviously not great. I suppose I do remember Flower coming up to me and go, "Don't worry, you're not the only captain to be Sehwagged, and you won't be Sehwagged, and you won't be the only captain not to be Sehwagged again." I mean, it is mad. Only 120 in a session. Well, actually, at that time, that was huge. That was a huge amount. Obviously, what Bazball has done is if they haven't scored 120 by drinks, they'll be disappointed. But that felt like, oh God, this is going to be a long, long tour. And he's so dangerous. He is, for all the other great players that India played. I played against for Indian players. Sehwag at home was the most daunting because of the ability to take the game away, and that's why those kind of talents are so special. I mean, it felt, if you'd have said to me now how many did they score in that first session, I would have said 150, 160. That's what it felt like. So 120 actually wasn't too bad, but yeah, he got the ball rolling, and it wasn't an ideal start to my captaincy.
It wasn't, but you get him out. Cheteshwar Pujara, who you're going to see a lot of in this series, gets a double 100. You guys go out to bat, and yeah, some modest contributions, decent contributions from you and Matt Pryor notwithstanding. You're bundled out for 191. At one point, 97 for 7, and this is probably the low point of the tour, isn't it? You're only 2 and a bit days in. It looks like the pattern is India are going to get 500. You're going to get bundled out against spin. How is that? I mean, the pressure that must suddenly now induce as you look at this long tour.
Yeah, I think historically, England aren't great players of spin in terms of, like, if you're looking compared to the Asian players, just because how much they grown up playing on spin. You watch every single kind of Indian club game, school game, village game, street game. They're dominated by spinners, ragging it on some pretty dodgy pitches, and you learn to be flexible. You learn to pick length so well, and actually we're just not accustomed to it. So one of the great challenges is to feel comfortable playing spin in the subcontinent. And the first 30 balls, 40 balls are so hard. No, we're used to starting against seam, moving ball. It feels very normal. Here you're starting against men around the bat. Everything, although the ball's not as fast, it happens so quick. It feels like everything happens so quickly. You know, there's always men around the bat, the chirp, and then suddenly if you get past those 30 balls, you know, it's one of the nicest places to bat. That first innings, I think, the build-up of three warm-up games where we probably didn't actually face that much spin, but also the mental thing about, this is how I'm going to play, I'm going to be positive, I'm going to do this, and then the nets you are, it's very different when you walk out actually under pressure and there's consequence to your innings. So actually you do have to, I know this is very un-Bazball and it's probably out of vogue, but you do have to know how, be very comfortable defending a ball with men around the bat. If you can defend, this is again very old school, but if you can feel comfortable defending, you attack when you want to attack. When you can't defend, you have to attack when you don't want to attack, and it's dangerous, isn't it? So you have to have some kind of defence. Obviously, the modern players will probably see now that they'll be sweeping, reverse sweeping, and doing all that like, and not worrying about the defence. But certainly my method, and a lot of the methods gone in the past, is that. And I think that first innings, actually, for all the attacking nature we did in the nets, we're going to take them on. Actually, fundamentally got to us where you can't just always play attack. You've got to be able to defend, and we weren't good enough to under pressure to survive the onslaught.
Then we get possibly the turning point in the series, because yes, you've conceded 330 odd. There's no way back. You're not coming back from conceding a deficit of 330, but fight is what is shown. And you and Matt Prior in particular put on a lengthy partnership that gives England hope of a draw, false hope as it turns out. But was that the turning point for you? And it's strange to think of a turning point only 4 days into a series, but you'd gone from such a low, you had to claw something back. You end up making 176. Give yourself a chance in that match. Do you think that was a crucial moment?
Well, looking back, you'd say yes, but at the time, I think, as a captain, new captain, you go in, your words get more importance when you can back them up with results. And actually, I think before that talk, I think we had a meeting in, I want to say, the war buildings in Westminster or something. You'll know better what they were called.
The war rooms, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Winston Churchill's gaff.
That's right.
It's a nice and stirring, rousing environment.
Very English and very patriotic. And actually, my first ever team talk was there. And I ummed and ahed about saying at that time, people still say I'm not a very good public speaker, but at the time I hated public speaking, and the thought of it drove me mad. What was I going to say? And I had all this stuff written down. I did kind of go through it as I wanted, but fundamentally I wanted this England side, the England side I captained, was all about winning. Somehow, somewhere, somehow, don't know how you do it, don't mind how you do it, it's all about the end result. And if you can't win, or we're struggling, we're going to fight, and we're going to just make it as hard as the opposition not to win. But ultimately, it's all about the results. Like, very, very different to what Ben Stokes would say to his side now, where it's about how we play, take the result out of it, and it's about entertaining. Where mine was, what did we win, lose, or draw? And we're going to show fight in either way. And I suppose that opportunity in Ahmedabad came up for me to back. We couldn't win the game, but we could almost draw it. And probably, I think you say we're 5 down at day 4, the old hope which kills you, and then we fell pretty quickly the next morning. But there was a chance where me and Matty could have batted a bit longer. We might have been able to draw the game out of nowhere and move on to Mumbai, but we didn't. Whether, looking around, whether the other players thought, well, actually, if he can do it, and Matty can do it, then we can all do it. And actually, I don't know. You're going to have to ask them. But I think, like all these things, when you're not just suddenly bowled out again cheaply, and it's here we go again, we showed a bit of fight, I think it was important. You know, at the time, put it in context. People were tweeting, I won't name who, TMS commentators, it's 4-0, England can't play spin. You know, that's where we were at, and we actually proved that we got 360 or 380 in the second innings, and we probably could play spin. We just now needed to deliver it when we had a chance, not when we were, behind the 8 ball in the game.
It was Michael Vaughan who said that, and he's not a man who's averse to a trenchant opinion here and there. But you're 1-0 down, and that's sort of not a great place to be when you're going to the hardest place, potentially the hardest place in the world to win a series. So it's not that you tear up the plans, but when you get to Mumbai and the Wankhede, in comes Monty Panesar, and this seems to flip a switch for the rest of the series.
Well, it does. I mean, fundamentally, we had no choice because we got to Mumbai, and actually you net on the wickets there. You're not on the wicket, but on the square, sorry. And it was ragging. It was almost unplayable in the nets, whether it's the red soil or whatever, but it was obviously a ploy. We were two wickets away netting, and the wicket looked exactly the same as we were netting on, and balls were pitching outside leg stump, going past off stump, bouncing. I think it was the bounce as well. And whatever happened, we thought this is going to be a 2.5 day game. And it did turn. But it was just a no-brainer. You had to play the extra spin, and Monty, was absolutely brilliant.
Pep Guardiola,
a perfectionist,
a tactical genius,
the best manager of his generation,
the best manager in history.
Reserve team coach Pep Guardiola, a popular former player at the Nou Camp, will take over from Rijkaard.
This is a podcast all about the man who has shaped the modern game.
It feels almost as if he's solved the riddle, if he's cracked the code for football.
From his history in La Masia to dominating football across Europe.
He's brought a brand of football to the Premier League that we've never seen before.
Everybody plays like Pep's teams now.
On football, he takes you to heaven.
From BBC 5 Live.
Sporting Giants, Pep Guardiola.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
In the history of English Test cricket abroad, this match is often brought up as one of England's most sensational and remarkable victories, in part because India win the toss, which is a great advantage on a pitch that's going to deteriorate. Get 327, Pujara again. England's shown their frailties against spin. And were it not for a sensational partnership of 206 between you and KP and what has been described as one of England's greatest ever innings away from home by KP, who makes 186, you witness a lot of it from the other end. This suddenly changes the entire feel of the series.
It does. I mean, I remember losing the toss and coming back in, and everyone's like, "Well, one job." And actually, which I didn't have one job as captain. In one sense, that took the pressure off because there's almost no way we're going to win this game from here. And actually, 320 was above par score on that wicket. I think Pujara played brilliantly. It didn't turn straight away, but it turned pretty much straight away. So, it was they played nicely, and then. It's just the reason why you bring a player back is that not many people who I played with or I played against can play in innings like that. It was truly extraordinary. He, against people like Harbhajan, decent bowler, Ashwin, decent bowler, Oja on spinning, bouncing wicket. He just took the out of them, really.
What was his method?
Well, we all remember his talk about him not being able to play left arm spins. I think he had a nervous 10 minutes just before lunch. When he got out there. But apart from that, he just looked to play. He played his aggressive attacking way, but with such control and authority. He just never looked like he was getting out. He was. The stages where Indian bowlers in their home conditions didn't know where to bowl at him, and it was demoralising for them. And I've always said, and I think it's quite interesting why in this Bazball approach, and if you can put India under pressure with the bat, this is now only a few people can do it, and attack them. They're not used to it as a side and as bowlers because they're not the majority of the time they have their own way. What's their last stat? They've lost 3 out of the last 48 games at home or something silly like that. Because they're so used to dominating, and when someone stands up and plays that way, and it takes them by surprise, and it happens so infrequently because such high skill needed that it was as I said, he played an innings which not if anybody could play. Obviously, probably a few could, but it was brilliant, and it was just what we needed to get past them and put them under pressure with the bat. And then, because again, a bit like the ball, when they're not used to a side going at them, when they're suddenly behind, in the third innings, not the second innings, but in the third innings on a spinning wicket, they didn't really know how to play, and Monty and Swanee was superb.
You at the other end, you have to maintain great phlegmatism, don't you, throughout all of this? Because my recollection of that innings is KP playing some quite outrageous shots, forcing fielders back out to the boundary. Does it interrupt your bubble at all?
No, I think it was one of the, for all the stuff which has been said about mine and KP's relationship and what happened afterwards. I don't know exactly the stats about our records playing together, but I think our record batting together was actually really good, and the fact that we were so different just complemented each other all the way so well. Like KP, and this is not a criticism, is like a peacock. He wants his feathers out. That's how he operates. He wants to be there, the centre of attention, taking the opposition on, and that's what gets him going. That's what makes him the great batter he was. Well, I just wasn't like that. I didn't want the attention to be on me. So actually, with him doing his stuff, kind of all the focus went onto him. The same as Australia and Adelaide, and we batted together. And there's other partnerships where he would take all the attention away, and I could just get on with my game and just potter along, and it made a big difference. And that was one of my better hundreds actually on a turning wicket, and I was gutted to get out because I think Ashwin got me nicked off because I thought we needed a few more to do it. I think KB then exploded. A few wickets went the other end, but it was a great privilege actually to watch that innings from where I did for a majority.
Well, ordinarily we say it's bowlers that win matches and batters set it up, but you just have to look at that. Between you scored 308. England's total was 413. You get yourself a lead, and it's enough of a lead, 86, to put pressure on, and this is when the change of selection really comes in. In the first innings, Panesar and Swan had taken 9 wickets. They now proceed to take all 10, and you actually kind of bundle India out for such a modest total. The game is won, and
it is with the ball then, yeah.
To go from where you were in the previous Test match to where you now find yourself, the whole series has been flipped on its head. So just give us a little bit insight of what it's like to be captaining when you've got 2 spinners on a ragging pitch, and they've got the ball on a string. I mean, is that the kind of heaven?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the easiest captaincy you'll ever do. Just throw the balls to those 2, and then they do the work. And I don't know how much the actual seamers did actually bowl. Whether I changed it up a little bit, I can't remember. But the only thing you're worried about, aren't you, with a lead of 80? I thought we left a few out there in that first innings because when you get ahead, you just want that lead to be 120, 130. So any chase above 80, 90 on that wicket would have been tough. I don't know what we ended up chasing, 40 in the end, but Monty on a turning wicket, what was his strength? His strength was bowling the same ball over and over again, never missing length at a decent enough pace, pitching on and off on the stumps, some turning, some skidding on, and when they did turn it ragged, it would have been very hard to play, and then you probably got the greatest off spinner we've ever produced. At the other end, certainly against left-handers, it was I'll say captaincy made easy.
Well, you win it by 10 wickets. 58 you needed to knock off, which you do in under 10 overs with gay abandon, quite extraordinarily. And this is against.
Why are you smirking when you say that? Looking at my batting.
Well, because
it's
because
you look at the next game, I hit 6s. Would you believe?
Well, we'll come to the next game. You do some extraordinary things in the next game, but there's something kind of Baz Baileyan about knocking that off because I don't want to spend too long on this, but it was only a year before that you'd crawled to 70 odd all out when chasing 140 in Abu Dhabi. So was there a conscious decision?
Yeah.
If we're on a ragging pitch, let's not get bogged down here. Let's just finish this game off.
Well, it's not. If we're chasing a small target, let's do it quickly. That was the learning from Abu Dhabi, rightly or wrongly. We're either going down in a blaze of glory and we're going to get bowled out, or we're not. I think it was mine and Strauss's fault. We were something like 40 or 30 overs, going nowhere, doing nothing, and then we ended up losing that game. So if we had a small total, we'll just go and play some shots. Well, was it Compo? I think Compo got going.
Compo did, yeah.
He got a 30 didn't he, actually? Yeah, yep. I think I might have blocked at the other end looking for a red inker, but he it was just a great away win. Lose the toss, ragged wicket, and actually probably because we beat India. I'll go back to the fact that we beat India 4-0 at home in 2011 to become number one side in the world. They wanted revenge, and normally they would have gone 1-0 up, played on a flat wicket, hoped to nick it at the end, as I said. Actually, by playing on such a turning wicket where the result was only going to be a result, obviously they would have still backed themselves like they did with their world-class spinners and winning the toss. But so from there to win that was brilliant.
So now you have this much overused word, momentum. Did it mean anything? Because you now go to Kolkata, lose the toss again because you insist on calling heads.
You only call heads.
Yes.
Would you chase? That's what I'm saying. No, this is not should be on podcast. I never chased the toss. I always just called heads. If I started losing a couple, I never. What would you then change?
No. I'm always tails every time. So you've lost the toss again, but you now do have. Or do you have momentum? I mean, does it mean anything in cricket, or is that a sort of a media thing?
It's a media thing because actually, when you walk out to actually play the next Test match, you start a 0-0, and it's an isolated ball, isn't it? The first ball's an isolated incident from the last. However, we know this side's then beatable. So when you know it's beatable and you know you can beat them and have beaten them recently, that can only give you confidence. As and that is a cliche thing to say. But what about this game? I remember was the fact that actually the conditions were very different, and we had the ability to adapt. After I think 19 wickets falling for spin in the first game in that Mumbai game, the fact that it didn't spin as much, but the seam bowling from Jimmy and Finney was definitely playing, was absolutely superb. And actually, so you had Monty kind of holding an end, and when it wasn't turning, then we could attack with the seamers. And the adaptability of that side, I think, was actually what made that tour very special.
So India get their 316 again, which I guess you're pretty happy with. But once again, you've replied with a mammoth total. And what's important about this to me is just looking at this. Your previous three major innings, 400, 406, 413, 523. This was a side that Michael Vaughan said couldn't play against spin. You've now hit your third century in consecutive tests, ending up on 190. Your dismissal, I'm sure you will tell us about. But
why did you bring that up?
Well, because I get the sense that it might still be gnawing at you, Alistair. A lead of 207, but you make 190, and you're now in sort of complete control of both your game and the side and the series.
Well, I think the 300 at Mumbai I thought was above par, and I thought we were in trouble. The 300 at Kolkata was a long way below par. That was a belting wicket, and I think walking off, I think we all sensed that if someone could play an innings of substance and we get a lead, we've got a chance here. And luckily, I suppose a couple of times in my career, I had these little periods where I scored very heavily in successive games. My batting wasn't exactly aesthetically pleasing, lots of moving parts, and I think the problem in moving parts was that everything had to be in sync to work absolutely perfectly. You look at a simple technique of Joe Root, or I suppose Jack Callis has probably got the most simple technique, but less to go wrong. A lot of my things wouldn't go wrong massively, but they're out of timing, and then actually catastrophic things happen, and often did. But for that little period, like it was in 2010-11, I found the rhythm of batting of every innings quite quickly, and I did have a huge hunger for runs, and actually those kind of wickets suited me because they kind of took out one of my main ways of getting out. They were slow, you couldn't really nick off, and you watched enough of me nicking off in times. If you can't nick off, it's quite good, because I didn't often miss at that stage of my career. I didn't get bowled very often. I did towards the end, which is probably why I gave up. And if you didn't get bowled, you couldn't nick off. There wasn't that many ways of getting out. Well, I did find a way in this innings to get out. I just kind of got into that rhythm of batting. And so when you're batting like that, an hour goes so quickly. When you're batting terribly, an hour looks impossible to get away. And it was just one of those moments. Lucky enough to do it. And as I said, I was in that much control. I was sweeping, paddle sweeping. I'm not going to mention it too many times, running down and planting Ashwin for massive sixes.
Massive,
I mean,
huge.
Eden Gardens is one of the biggest grounds I've ever played in, and they were going miles over, well, 2 yards over the boundary rope. But in my head, 10 years ago, they were going into the top tier of some massive concrete stand.
Talk us through the run out, though. Go and get it off your chest. See this as a therapy session.
God, it is. I've got the dog. I've got the stroke. I've got the dog's stroke. I just, the only thing about this decision, apart from being so stupid, was Flower. Like, I think it was 120 one of the breaks or whatever. The scores are relevant. He said, looked at me and said, "We haven't scored a double hundred for however many years." I don't know who he said, but
84-5.
I knew you.
Gatting and Fowler.
How do you remember that? I wasn't even born.
Well,
actually,
I was sadly.
You know that. Why didn't you get a double? You got a great opportunity to get a double, and I was like, I batted quite fluently until I got to about 170 odd, and then I just couldn't really get the thing off the square. But 190, I was like 10 away from the 100 and the double 100, and then KP just flicked one off his legs to Kohli at square leg, and I could see it. They just, you know how sometimes people just throw it so aimlessly at the stumps, like Bumrah did so beautifully in 2018. And I just saw it coming, and rather than just tapping in, I just lifted my bat thinking, oh, that'll miss me, and then as I was trying to put the bat down, it cannons the stumps, and yeah, I didn't often do stupid things in my cricket. I was quite consistent. I kind of prided myself on, yes, I made mistakes in terms of like batting and captaincy and dropping, but I didn't do anything stupid, and that was stupid, and it bloody irritates me to this day why I did it. And then just, I don't know how long I batted for in that innings, but all I can remember walking off thinking, "You are an idiot. You're an idiot. How embarrassing. How embarrassing. Get me off this field." And I sat in the change room, the towel over my head, thinking that for about 10-15 minutes, and I couldn't get over the fact I'd done it, and I couldn't then enjoy what I should, like, you know, offer your 190 before you walk out to bat. You snap your hand off and you walk off, helmet off, and thinking adulation. I was embarrassed. I don't even took my helmet off. I don't think I raised my bat. I just wanted to slink in the corner. And also I thought we'd lost left runs out there, and knowing how, you know, like in Mumbai when when KP got out, we kind of folded a bit, knowing how every run was crucial to get that lead.
Well, it really didn't matter, and you didn't need to worry, because that lead of 207 was always going to be too much. You mentioned it earlier, but it was Anderson and Finn, not the spinners, who pick up the wickets in the second innings. 3 apiece for them, and this is, I suppose, indicative of what a different series of surfaces you're playing on now, and the mastery of reverse swing, I guess, as well. Was that partly what got you over the line? Without
a doubt. And actually, I think one of the things we had learnt about reverse swing, and Mushtaq Ahmed, big involvement in the side. You know, reverse swing, everyone just tends to bowl in at the stumps all the time, and actually it's quite easy to play. You know, this thing about reverse swing, on the ball's reversing, but if you're aiming at the stumps, you set for it as a batter. You know, if you know, and you open your stance, and the Indians are brilliant at playing, and subcontinent players flicking you through the leg side. We've got the ball reversing for loads of times, but we didn't really know how to execute. And actually, when we worked out that you actually can bowl full stump, and you just go in and out slightly from there, it brings every dismissal into play. And if you don't know which way it's going as a batsman, it's really hard. And Jimmy and Finney were outstanding on that series, and I think just bowling fourth stump, you know, not knowing, challenging both sides of the edges, was high class, and they didn't miss length. So it was we had the Indians under pressure actually, and as I said, you get them under pressure. You know, they don't often respond that well with the bat, because it happens so infrequently for them. Well,
they were only able to set you 41 to win, and although they were a little stumble, you were 8 for 3 at one point, thanks to Alistair Cook stumped, which is the second time in your career. Had it gone to your head, hitting Ashwin back over his head for 6? You just wanted to do it again?
Obviously we've spoken about trying to knock off small totals, but maybe I thought I was slightly better than I was. And yeah, I did try and hit him into the stand again, and foolishly missed it by a long way. And then 8 for 3, I did have a horrible feeling, as you do, but was it barely got 20 off just to see us over the line. But a brilliant result, and actually those two contrasting test wins played by that side was outstanding.
So you now go to the last game. You cannot lose the series. You've retained the trophy because it's 4-match series. You're 2-1 up. You go to Nagpur. What are you expecting in Nagpur?
Well, you say we'd retain the trophy. Like for me, it was like, it was a brilliant night in Kolkata. I think quite a lot of Barmy Army had kind of made that, the Mumbai Kolkata as their two things. A great night, and we always tended to celebrate on tours with them, and it was brilliant. But there's this thing inside me where it was like, don't let this opportunity go. Like, we're going to Nagpur, it's going to be a result wicket. It's, that's kind of a given. It's, probably a 2.5 day game. Let's hopefully get on the right end of result and do something very special. And actually, when we got there, it did look like a result wicket. Very, very slow. But just was very, very slow the whole game. Actually, we didn't bat particularly well. We couldn't really get it off the square. But actually, we thought it'd deteriorate. It didn't deteriorate. It just held together. It was one of, like, you say about a birthday present and a Christmas present. Actually, for a pitch when you don't want to lose on, we could have played on that game for 15 days. Actually, it took us about a day to get into it and realise that actually, don't worry about the runs. It's very hard to get out, and it was brilliant.
It seems ironic to me, though, that you've played on 3 really different surfaces, but they were quite tricky in their own different ways. And then you finally arrive in this surface where 24 wickets fall. Yeah. Right? You've got big hundreds in 3 consecutive matches. Actually, this one, you don't score many runs at all, but England are never in any danger of losing the game. I mean, you sauntered to a draw, 351 for 4.
We did in the second innings, but the first innings actually we didn't bat particularly well. I think we all struggled with the nature of the wicket, and actually India bowled a bit differently to me in that game. They bowled 7-2 leg side field, and this is when I wish I could play the reverse sweep, because if I could have done that, I could have dragged one of those players over. They're bowling left arm around the wicket, and they had 3 men out on the leg side and also some men in front, so I couldn't actually get the thing off the square on a slow wicket as well. I struggled. I really did struggle, but it was even Stevens, wasn't it? I think even Stevens, and then on that trying to bat on the last day. Well, I didn't get any in the second innings either, but actually the rest of the side did, and I didn't watch a ball until tea, because I was just thinking, let's just not mess this up. But actually, we could have looking back now, and actually we could have batted for another 3 days on that wicket, because I don't think you could have got out once you got your head round just block, and runs will eventually come, and they did. I think Trotty Belly got a very comfortable hundreds, which when you're trying to win a series, nothing's comfortable, and it was that day.
I mean, it's a throwback to another age, isn't it, before we finish, because I can't believe now that if India were 2-1 down and as a deciding test match, that you'd have got a pitch like that.
Well, there must have been a mistake. Like, when you walked up to it, it didn't look like it was going to play for 5 days like that. It just didn't deteriorate. It just stayed the same for the 5 days, and would have stayed the same for another 10 days, really. But it was a real trick. I suppose the only regret I have about that series, and it was the right regret, because actually we came home for the right reasons, but at the beginning of the tour we made a decision that would leave that night and the end of day 5. And if we'd have known what had happened and we were going to win the series, I would have just loved to have stayed. I know it was 23rd of this evening, we'd have got home on Christmas Eve, but that one night in the changing rooms and in the boat hotel bar with the team, that's what you play for. And those memories, that team would have never played again together, I'm pretty sure about it. 2 spinners, 2 seamers, or all that kind of stuff. And so we did actually achieve something very special as a group, and we never really got the chance to celebrate, because quite rightly we wanted to get home. And actually at the beginning of this tour we're probably thinking we might lose this series, and the last thing we want to do is spend another night in Nagpur. So yeah, I do regret that decision, but what a tour. And actually, the team, as I said about adaptability, being able to cope with almost every condition thrown at them and find a solution. And as I said, it was all about winning, and we did win that, and that will always go down as a great moment.
Spookily, that Nagpur Test match, that was where you made your debut 6 years earlier. Joe Root made his debut in that game, end up being the 2 leading run scorers for England. Achievements like that are all great, but when you look back on your career, that tour and winning in India, where does that rate?
It's right up there, right up there with 2010 Ashes win and 2015 Ashes win. How you compare, I don't know how you can compare, but in terms of level of achievement, in terms of skills needed, that was brilliant. And the added bonus of being a captain, leading a side was very, very special.